Story Narae, the art of storytelling.
Story Narae, where every book opens to a new tale. Sherlock Holmes Mystery Collection. Today's story is The Stockbroker's Club, a strange case hidden behind London's financial world. Let's uncover the truth together. The Stockbroker's Club. Right after my marriage, I took over a small medical practice located in the Paddington district. It had once been run by Mr. Parker, a doctor who was widely known for his reputation. However, as he grew older and began suffering from chorea nervous disorder in which the muscles move irregularly and involuntarily, the number of patients visiting him gradually decreased. People tend to believe that a doctor who treats illnesses must be in perfect health himself. Because of that, they often doubt the ability of a physician who suffers from a chronic disease. As Mr. Parker's health declined, his medical performance fell as well. By the time I acquired the practice, the annual income had dropped to around £1,200 to £1,300. Still, I was young and in good health, and I was confident that within a few years, I could restore the clinic to its former lively state. For about 3 months after taking over the practice, I was so busy that I could not spare even a moment to visit Baker Street, and thus had no chance to see Holmes. Moreover, he was not the sort of man to go out unless there was a clear reason. Then, one morning in June, while I was having breakfast and reading the Journal of the British Medical Association, I heard the doorbell ring, followed by a voice I knew well. The slightly hoarse yet sharp voice could belong to no one but Holmes. "Watson, it's truly good to see you again. How is your wife? I suppose the excitement from the Sign of Four affair has finally settled by now?" Holmes stepped in with his usual energetic stride. "Quite so. My wife and I are both doing well," I replied, shaking his hand warmly. "The truth is, I came because I have a purpose," he said. "Surely your interest in mysterious cases hasn't disappeared completely just because you've been occupied with patients?" Holmes lowered himself into the rocking chair as he spoke. "Of course not. Just last night, I went through my old notes again. I even reorganized some of the investigation files. Do you plan to continue recording your cases from now on? Isn't that obvious? Experiencing and documenting as many cases as possible, that remains my greatest wish." "I'm glad to hear it. In that case, how about today?" "Gladly. If you ask me, I'll go with you anytime. We'll have to travel to Birmingham. It could take quite some time. Will that be all right?" "I don't mind. As long as you want me with you." "And your patients? You must have appointments scheduled." "The doctor at the neighboring clinic owes me a favor. I've looked after his patients a few times. He promised he'd return the favor, so if I ask him, I'm sure he'll look after mine." "That's excellent. Though I hear your health hasn't been too good lately. A summer cold can be truly troublesome." Holmes leaned back in his chair, half closing his eyes as he observed me, and then spoke. "As a matter of fact, I caught a rather severe cold last week and stayed at home for 3 days. I've recovered completely now, but does it still show on my face?" "No, you're right. You look perfectly healthy," I replied. "Then how did you know I had a cold?" "My dear Watson, it seems you haven't seen me in so long that you've forgotten what I'm capable of." "So you deduced it? From what exactly?" "From your slippers." "My slippers? What about them?" I looked down at the pair of new enamel slippers I had recently bought. "They're new, aren't they? You've worn them for only a few weeks. But I noticed the soles were slightly scorched. At first, I thought you had dried them near the fire and burnt them by accident. Yet the round paper label was still attached on the instep. If they had gotten wet, the label would have come off. That means you wore them while warming yourself by the fire. And a healthy man would not sit by the fire in June with his slippers on, unless he had been down with a cold." Holmes's reasoning, as always, sounded remarkably simple once spoken aloud. He must have read my thoughts from my expression, for he gave a thin, amused smile and continued. I always feel that I reveal too much when I explain my deductions. If I only presented the result, it would leave a much stronger impression. Now then, we should set out for Birmingham. I'll get ready right away. But what kind of case is it? I'll explain the details on the train. Our client is waiting in a four-wheeler outside. Please make haste. Understood. Give me just a moment. I quickly wrote a brief note to the neighboring doctor and went upstairs. After explaining the situation to my wife and changing my coat, I stepped outside with Holmes. The doctor you mentioned earlier, does he live next door? I asked. Holmes glanced at the brass nameplate beside the door. Yes. He acquired his practice the same way you did. Was it an old establishment? Indeed. The building and its history are identical to yours. Then yours must be the busier one. In truth, we do receive more patients. But tell me, how did you guess that? From the stairs. Your steps are worn down at least 3 inches deeper than his. Holmes then turned to the man waiting by the carriage. This is Mr. Paul Pycroft. Please, introduce yourself. Coachman, time is short. Let's depart at once. The man sitting across from me was a well-built, handsome young gentleman. He had a frank expression, a short curly blonde beard, and wore a neat black suit with a rounded felt hat. Everything about him suggested he worked in the financial world. Though clearly a Londoner, he looked as if he would have made an excellent soldier had he enlisted, and perhaps even a fine athlete, one who could hold his own against anyone in England. His round, healthy face carried a cheerful vitality, yet a faint shadow at the corner of his lips hinted that he had worries on his mind. It was only after we had taken our seats in the first-class carriage of the train bound for Birmingham that I truly began to grasp the weight of the trouble that seemed to rest on the young man's mind. Holmes, seated casually by the window with that sharp gaze of his, observed him for a moment before speaking. Mr. Pycroft, we have roughly 70 minutes ahead of us on this journey. Please recount once again, in full, the peculiar incident you experienced. Hearing the story a second time will be of use to me as well, so I ask that you speak as carefully and as plainly as you can. Watson, this case may turn out to be something significant, or it may amount to very little. But one thing is certain, it carries the scent of the kind of strange affair we are particularly fond of. Now then, Mr. Pycroft, if you please. The young man drew a quiet breath, his eyes bright with a mix of tension and resolve, and began to speak. The most foolish person in this entire affair was me. I had fortune right in front of me, and yet I let it slip through my fingers as though I myself had cast it aside. Drive, Watson, I will tell you everything, every strange thing that has happened to me. I was employed at a firm called Coxon & Woodhouse, located on Draper Gardens. Last spring, the company invested heavily in Venezuelan bonds from South America, and the venture failed catastrophically. We suffered immense losses. You may have seen the reports in the newspapers. I had been with the company for 5 years and had earned a fair amount of recognition, but when the firm collapsed entirely, all 27 of us, myself included, suddenly found ourselves without work. Mr. Coxon gave me an excellent letter of recommendation, but that alone did little to change my circumstances. With that letter in hand, I went from company to company, but not a single place would hire me. I had £70 saved, a sum I managed to put away from my weekly wage of £3. That small reserve allowed me to hold on for a while, but no matter how carefully one spends, money that only goes out and never comes in will always run dry. Eventually, the situation became so desperate that I could no longer even afford stamps and envelopes to send out applications. I was trapped between want and exhaustion, and for the first time, I truly felt despair closing in. Then, one day, I heard that there was a vacancy at a large brokerage firm called Mawson and Williams on Lombard Street. You may or may not know the name, but within the trade, it is considered one of the most solid houses on the exchange, highly respected and financially secure. I gathered the last of my remaining money and sent off my recommendation and application. I was so worn down by disappointment that I scarcely held any hope at all. And yet, to my amazement, a reply came, instructing me to report for work the following Monday. They said I would undergo a brief interview and then be assigned to duties almost immediately. I even heard rumors that the firm was so stable they could pick a clerk's name at random from a stack of applications without fear of loss. For me, it was nothing short of a miracle. The pay was £4 a week more than what I had earned before, and the duties, they said, would be nearly identical to those I had handled at Coxon's firm. I thought, at last, the worst had passed. That drive, Watson, is precisely when things began to grow strange. I was lodging at 17 Porter's Terrace, Hampstead. On the day I received confirmation of my employment, I was in my room smoking when the landlady brought me a visiting card. It bore the name Arthur Pinner, financial agent. I had never heard the name before and could not imagine why such a person would be asking for me, but curiosity, I admit, got the better of me, and I asked that he be shown in. Moments later, a man entered, middle height, with dark hair, dark eyes, and a dark beard. His nose was sharp, almost giving him the look of a Jew, though his manner of speech was brisk and direct. I could at least tell he was not the sort to waste time with meaningless pleasantries. "You are Mr. Hall Pycroft, I presume?" The moment he spoke my name with such certainty, I felt an unmistakable sense that something unusual was about to begin. "Yes, that's correct. What is this about?" Pinner leaned forward without the slightest hesitation and spoke in a confident tone. "You were working at Coxon's firm until recently, were you not?" "Yes, I left a few months ago." "And you've now been accepted by Mawson's company?" "Yes, I received the news just today." He pulled his chair a little closer and continued, sounding rather pleased with himself. "The reason I came here is because I heard quite a remarkable opinion about your abilities. You know Mr. Parker, who was a manager at Coxon's, don't you? He spoke very highly of you, said you were an exceptionally capable clerk. To hear that honestly pleased me. I had always believed I worked diligently, but I never imagined anyone would praise me to that extent. Mr. Pycroft, would you say you have a good memory?" "I suppose my memory is fairly decent," I replied modestly. "And even while you've been out of work, you've continued to keep an eye on the market, I assume?" "Certainly. I check the stock prices every morning." "Splendid. That's the habit of a man destined for success. Then allow me to test you briefly. What was the price of Ayrshire today?" "It moved between £106 and 5 pence, and £105 and 78 pence. "Good. And the New Zealand Consolidated Bonds?" £104. "Excellent. Then how about the British Broken Hills?" £7 to £7 and 6 pence, I answered. "Remarkable. Even better than I was told. A man like you would be utterly wasted as a mere clerk at Mawson's." I thought his praise a little too excessive. "Mr. Pinner, I'm not nearly as exceptional as you say. I'm already grateful enough simply to have been taken in by Mawson's." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice as if to reveal something confidential. "Mr. Pycroft, when you are young, it is right to dream boldly. That firm does not suit a man like you. Once you hear the terms I'm prepared to offer, you will have no desire to go to Mawson's at all. Tell me, when are you to start there?" "Next Monday," I said. "You will not go there." "What? You mean I won't go to Mawson's?" "Of course not. Because you are about to be appointed as the sales manager of the Franco-Midland Hardware Company. This company has a total of 134 branches all across France, not counting those in Brussels and San Remo." "I've never even heard of such a company," I said, clearly taken aback. "I'm sure you haven't. The firm has operated quietly, without noise or public display. All capital is put in by private investors, and the profits are so considerable that we have no need to advertise or issue public shares. My brother, Harry Pinner, is one of the founders and now serves as director, overseeing the board. He knows I have wide connections in the trade and asked me to find a young man with real promise. That is why, the moment I heard your name from Mr. Parker, I came straight here. The starting pay may sound modest at first, but we are prepared to offer you a salary of £500 a year. What? 500 a year? To be precise, that will be your starting salary. And for every transaction you successfully close, you will receive an additional 1% commission. Which means, in truth, your income will be far higher. In fact, your commissions alone will likely exceed your base pay. The moment I heard those words, a sudden dizziness washed over me, and I dropped back into my chair, quite without ceremony. Yet even in that moment of shock, the thought that came first was something about this is strange. But I know nothing at all about the hardware trade. Why would you choose me? In our line of work, a sharp mind for numbers is everything. And in that regard, you are exceptional. Mr. Pinner, Mawson's has offered me a salary of £200 a year. It may not be much, but it is a secure position. And as for the company you speak of, I know nothing about it nor the nature of its business. That is of no consequence. You are exactly the man we need. There's no need for further discussion. For now, here is £100. If you are willing to work with us, consider it a token and simply slip it into your pocket. Your company treats its employees quite generously, it seems. Then when would I be expected to begin? Tomorrow by 1 o'clock, you must be in Birmingham. This letter is to be delivered to my brother. Go to 126B, Corporation Street, and you will find him there. It is our temporary office. He will conduct a formal reappointment meeting with you, but it will be a mere formality, nothing to worry about. This is truly more than I ever dared hope for. It feels like a dream. On the contrary, we are the ones who should be grateful. You are a man worthy of such treatment. There is nothing serious, but there are a few small formalities. Please write this down on the paper. I hereby accept appointment as sales manager of the Franco-Midland Hardware Company, at a minimum salary of £500 a year. I wrote the sentence exactly as he dictated, and he folded the paper neatly and slipped it into his pocket. Only one matter remains. What do you plan to do about Mawson's? Naturally, I will have to send in my resignation. That won't be necessary. In fact, I have just come from a rather heated exchange with one of their directors. When I asked him a few questions about you, he took great offense. He practically snarled at me, "Are you trying to steal our employee?" He even hurled a few insults. In the end, I lost patience and walked out. As I was leaving, he said, "No matter how much you offer him, he will still choose Mawson's." So I told him. On the contrary, he will choose our company, and he will not send Mawson's a single word. I then wagered £5 on it, and he accepted at once. He even added, "We pulled him out of desperation, he won't abandon us so easily." Can you imagine? That man is supposed to be a department head at Mawson's. Utterly absurd, isn't it? In a difficult situation? Nonsense. Why should I owe him anything? I've never even seen the man's face. I have no reason to feel indebted. If you wish it, I will send no word at all to Mawson's. Good. Then that is our agreement. I'm delighted to be the one to recommend a man of your ability. Here £100, and this letter of introduction. Be at 126B, Corporation Street by 1 o'clock tomorrow. I shall take my leave now. A capable young man like you is bound to find prosperity. That was the entirety of our conversation. I have repeated every word exactly, so I believe you now fully understand the situation. That night, I was so elated that I could hardly sleep. My mind kept circling back to the thought of this unexpected opportunity, and I found myself waiting eagerly for dawn. The next day, determined not to be late, I took the earliest train to Birmingham. Upon arrival, I left my luggage at a hotel and headed straight for the address he had given me. I arrived at exactly 1245 p.m. A full 15 minutes early, but I assumed that would not be a problem. 126B, Corporation Street turned out to be a narrow building wedged between two large shops. Inside, a spiraling stone staircase climbed upward, and each floor held small rooms, most of them rented out as offices by companies or professional men. On the wall of the first floor, there was a list of office names, yet nowhere did I see the name Franco Midland Hardware Company. In that instant, my heart sank sharply. What if this is all a fraud? Just as that uneasy thought took hold, a man approached me, someone who looked remarkably like Mr. Pinner from the previous night. His face, his voice almost identical, except now he was clean-shaven, and his hair appeared slightly lighter. "Are you Mr. Hall Pycroft?" "Yes, I am," I said cautiously. "Excellent. We've been expecting you. You've arrived sooner than I thought. My brother spoke of you with great admiration." "Thank you. I was just trying to locate the office. Our firm moved here only last week, so we haven't put our name on the board yet. We will soon. For now, please, come upstairs with me." I followed him all the way to the top of the staircase. The room he led me to was small, dusty, and bare. There were only 2 rooms in total, no curtains, no carpet, just emptiness. I had imagined a larger, more established office, perhaps with proper desks and ledgers, so the sight came as quite a surprise. Inside, there were only 2 wooden chairs and a small table. "Mr. Pycroft, you look disappointed," he observed, reading my expression. "Rome was not built in a day. We simply have not had time to furnish the place, but rest assured funds are plentiful. Please, have a seat and kindly hand me the letter you received from my brother." I took out the letter and gave it to him, and he began to read slowly, deliberately, taking his time as if savoring every word. "It seems my brother has taken quite a liking to you. He has a remarkably accurate sense of judgment. He prefers London-born men, while I tend to favor those from Birmingham. But this time, I felt it best to trust his instinct, so I have left the matter entirely in his hands. Now then, I officially accept you as a permanent member of our staff." "Thank you. What exactly will my duties be?" "I intend to place you in charge of one of our main Paris branches. From there, you will oversee the distribution of English porcelain to 134 agencies across France. The purchasing arrangements should be completed within the week, and until then, you will remain in Birmingham and assist with preliminary clerical work." "I see. And specifically, what will I be doing?" He opened a drawer and produced a thick red leather volume. "This is the Paris Commercial Directory. Each name is listed with its trade classification beside it. Take it home, and extract only the hardware dealers' names and addresses into a separate, clean register. It will become a highly valuable document later. But surely, there are already directories sorted by trade. Is there truly a need for me to rewrite it?" I asked with some caution. "Those directories are not to be trusted. Their categorization is completely different from ours. Take it home and work at your own pace. Return the completed list by 12 o'clock on Monday. That will be all for today. If you work with diligence, the company will make it worth your while." On my way back home, my mind was at war with 2 opposing thoughts. The £100 in my pocket told me that the employment was real. Yet everything about the office and the 2 men whispered that something was not as it seemed. Still, I had accepted their money, and a promise had been made. So I committed myself to the work with full determination. The moment I reached home, I began working without delay. But by Monday, I had barely reached the letter H in the directory. Even after working all through Sunday without rest, I had no choice but to return with the incomplete work and report honestly. The office looked exactly the same as before. When I explained, he responded calmly. "In that case, Finish it by Wednesday. But even by Wednesday, the task was far from done. I worked day and night, nearly without sleep, and only by Friday did I manage to complete it. I took it straight to the manager. Well done. It seems I underestimated the workload. This register will become an important reference for the company. I apologize sincerely for not meeting the original deadline. Now then, compile a second list, this time for furniture dealers. They too handle porcelain goods in large quantity. Report your progress tomorrow at 7 in the evening. Do not exhaust yourself. And once your work is done, you might as well enjoy a performance at the day music hall. 2 or 3 hours of entertainment would do you good. He let out a boisterous laugh. At that moment, I froze. For I saw quite clearly the exact same gold filling on the second molar of his left side. Just as I had seen on the man who called himself his brother. Sherlock Holmes regarded the young client with a quietly satisfied smile. While I, having listened to this bizarre account, could do nothing but stare blankly at the storyteller, utterly speechless. Drive, Watson, you were a little surprised, weren't you? When I first met Mr. Pinner's younger brother in London, I already knew. It was the gold tooth. A glimmer like that anyone who sees it once would remember it instantly. And as I mentioned earlier, their faces, even their voices, were nearly identical. The only differences were the shave and perhaps a wig, things that can be easily altered. But teeth do not lie. No matter how much two men resemble each other, it is impossible for two people to have the exact same gold filling in the exact same tooth. The manager behaved politely enough on the surface, but I had no understanding of what was truly happening. Why send me from London to Birmingham? Why was he already here before I arrived? Why send a recommendation letter to himself? I tried to clear my head, but none of the questions had answers. And then I thought of Mr. Sherlock Holmes. What seemed like a hopeless puzzle to me, I felt he could unravel with ease. So I took the night train to London, and that is how I came to be here with the two of you, on our way back to Birmingham. The tale of the stockbroker's clerk was astonishing, almost unbelievable. Even after the young man finished speaking, none of us said a word for a while. Holmes leaned back in his chair, his eyes glowing with a mixture of delight and intensity, as though he had just tasted a glass of the finest wine. "Watson," he said, with a spark of excitement. "What do you think? A remarkably interesting case, isn't it? There are several highly attractive elements in it. I expect you agree that meeting this brother, who is also the manager, in person at the Franco-Midland Hardware Company, will be a rather entertaining experience, won't you?" Holmes spoke brightly, clearly in excellent spirits. I remember the first time we met I saw that very same big, sudden smile on his face. "But Holmes," I asked, still turning the matter over in my mind, "what exactly do we intend to say to the man when we meet him?" "Ah, that is quite simple," he replied. "We shall tell him that two of my acquaintances are in need of employment. No one finds it strange to bring job seekers to a potential employer. It is the most natural pretext in the world." "A clever approach," I said. "Yes, that will do nicely. In truth, I very much want to meet this manager myself. I am extremely curious to learn exactly what game he is playing. But Watson, if you are to pose as a job seeker, what talent shall you claim to possess?" Holmes fell silent, biting lightly at his thumbnail as he stared absently out the window. He did not utter another word until we reached our destination. That evening, at exactly 7 o'clock, the three of us were walking down Corporation Street, bound for the Franco-Midland Hardware Company. "There is no point arriving early," said our young companion. "He only comes to the office when he expects to meet me. If you arrive before the appointment time, the office is always empty." "A most significant detail," Holmes murmured, clearly intrigued. At that moment, the young man suddenly cried out, "I knew it! Mr. Holmes, look there. That man walking ahead, that's the manager." Pycroft pointed across the street to a briskly walking dark-haired man. He was well dressed, and as he passed a newsboy shouting the evening edition, he purchased a paper casually, before disappearing into one of the nearby buildings without a hint of suspicion. There it is. That building, that's where the office is. Now, follow me. I'll handle this quietly. We followed the young man up to the 5th floor of the building. He knocked on a door that was left slightly ajar. A voice from inside called, "Come in." And just as he had described, the room beyond was cold and barren, almost desolate. There was only one desk, and at it sat the very same man we had seen on the street moments ago, reading the evening newspaper as though nothing in the world was amiss. But then, his face. A strange expression clung to it, something beyond words. Not sadness, no, something closer to sheer, silent fear. His forehead glistened with sweat. His cheeks had lost all color. And his eyes, empty, unfocused, stared ahead like a man whose spirit had already left him. He looked at Pycroft, but it was as though he didn't truly see him at all. At that moment, I knew something was profoundly wrong. "Sir, are you unwell?" Pycroft stepped closer, concern in his voice. The manager struggled to steady himself, his dry lips briefly passing over with his tongue as he forced his voice to work. "And who are these gentlemen?" "This is Mr. Harris from Birmingham. And this is Mr. Price, a local man," the young man replied, introducing us with perfect composure. "They are friends of mine, both experienced, capable men, but currently seeking employment. I hoped that if there were work available, you might consider taking them on." "Work? Why, yes, of course. Mr. Harris, what line of work were you engaged in before?" the manager asked, forcing a pale smile. "Accounting," Holmes answered with calm indifference. "Excellent. We are always in need of men like that." "And Mr. Price?" "Clerical work," I replied, concealing my tension as best I could. "The company could likely find duties for both of you. I shall inform you the moment a decision is made. Now go. Leave me. I have matters to attend to alone. Go. Go at once." He tried desperately to maintain composure, but the last words burst out uncontrollably, edged with panic. Holmes and I glanced at each other, uncertain how to respond. Pycroft, however, took a step forward. "Sir, I came here at the agreed time to receive my new assignment." "Ah, yes. Just a moment. Please, all of you wait here. 3 minutes, no more. Give me just 3 minutes." He bowed slightly, then slipped through a door at the back of the office. Holmes leaned in, his voice low and sharp as a razor. "What is he planning? Could it be that he means to flee?" "That's impossible," Pycroft said firmly. "That door leads only to the inner chamber. There is no other exit." The room was completely empty, at least it was yesterday. Holmes narrowed his eyes. Then what could he be doing in there? This case grows stranger by the minute. The man was half out of his wits with fear, but why? I spoke the thought that had been forming in my mind. Could it be that he has realized who we truly are? "I thought the same," Pycroft exclaimed. "No," Holmes said, shaking his head slowly. His face was deathly pale the moment we entered. "That reaction did not begin with us. Unless—" He stopped. From beyond the inner door came a faint pounding. Then again, louder. "Why would he knock on his own door?" the young man whispered. The knocking grew more frantic, echoing unnervingly against the empty walls. Holmes tilted his head slightly, listening with razor focus. Suddenly, there was a sharp, broken cough, followed by a rapid drumming, like heels striking wood. "Break it," Holmes commanded. He lunged forward, seizing the handle, but the door was locked from within. Without hesitation, we threw our weight against the wood. The hinges tore from the frame, and the door crashed inward. The inner chamber lay empty. But just beyond it another door. Holmes was already moving. He flung it open in a single motion. And there was the manager. His coat and waistcoat lay cast aside on the floor. And from a hook on the inside of the door, he had hung himself by his own braces, his body slack and swaying. His knees jerked upward. His head twisted at a grotesque angle. And in that instant we understood. The violent pounding we heard was his heels striking the door as he struggled. I caught him around the waist, lifting his weight, while Holmes and Pycroft freed the strap from his throat, dragging him carefully into the adjoining room. He lay on the floor, face ashen grey, only a faint thread of breath trembling between his darkened lips. 5 minutes earlier, he had merely looked pale. Now, he seemed a man returned from the brink of death. "Watson, will he live?" Holmes asked. His voice, for the first time, holding a note of unease. I did not answer immediately. Instead, I checked his pulse. It was thin, irregular, but slowly his breathing began to lengthen, his chest rising with steadier rhythm. His eyelids fluttered, the whites of his eyes showing faintly beneath them. He was very near the end, but he's coming back. Open the window, let the air in. And bring water. Quickly. I loosened his collar and splashed water over his face. As I lifted and lowered his arms to stimulate the lungs, color began to return slowly to his skin. There. He'll regain consciousness soon. Holmes stood silently, hands in his pockets. His head bowed slightly. Watching, thinking, waiting. Call the police, Holmes said calmly. Once they arrive, we shall lay out the entire case as it truly stands. I don't understand any of this, Pycroft stammered, baffled. What on earth is happening? Holmes glanced at him. Is it not obvious? That was merely their final move. Then you know everything that happened before as well? Of course. Watson, what do you make of it? To be honest, I haven't the slightest idea. Explain it to us. Holmes gave a low chuckle. Think back to the beginning, and there is only one possible conclusion. The entire case rests upon 2 key points. First, they made Mr. Pycroft write a handwritten agreement, stating he would join that absurd company. Second, they told him not to submit any resignation to Mawson's firm. Holmes turned to Pycroft. Surely you realized they wanted a sample of your handwriting. They needed your script and they acquired it in a most elegant fashion. But why? Why go to such lengths just to get my handwriting? That question, Holmes said quietly, is the very hinge of the case. Somewhere, there is a man who needed to imitate your writing. And that leads to the second point. The manager specifically told you, do not inform Mawsons that you will not be attending. Which implies the firm's personnel department fully believes that Pycroft will report to work Monday morning. And they must never learn that the real Pycroft will not be there. Good Lord, Pycroft breathed. I've been a complete fool. Holmes nodded once. Now do you see? They needed another man to go in your place. They would send him in forged handwriting matching yours, and since no one at the firm had ever seen you, there would be no suspicion. That's true, Pycroft murmured, stricken. Not a single person at Mawson's has ever laid eyes on me. Exactly. The only thing that could identify you was your handwriting. And once they had that, they had no further need of you except to keep you out of London. They paid you handsomely, sent you off to a ghost company, and buried you under meaningless busywork so you could not interfere. This is incredible, but tell me, why did Pinner play both the brother and the manager himself? There were clearly 2 men involved in this scheme. One is at Mawson's, posing as you. The other is here, the one we have just rescued. They could have hired a third to act as personnel officer. But bringing in more accomplices increases risk. So he simply played both roles himself. pretending to be two different men by altering hair and demeanor. And had you not noticed that golden tooth, you would never have suspected a thing. Pycroft let out a shuddering breath. I have been utterly deceived. But what is that other me doing right now at Mawson's? What am I supposed to do now? First, we must contact Mawson's. It's Saturday. They close at noon. There will be no one to answer. A porter or a night guard will remain. Someone will receive the message. I see. Actually, I recall a rumor from the old city. They said that ever since a large amount of negotiable securities arrived, a full-time armed guard has been stationed at Mawson and Williams. Do you think that is connected to all this? Holmes folded his hands behind his back. Then we should telegraph that guard. We must confirm whether someone under your name is presently employed there. But one thing still puzzles me. Why did that man attempt to hang himself? Even I cannot say. A hoarse voice spoke from behind us. Because of the newspaper. The manager had risen to his feet, rubbing gently at the red welt left by his suspenders around his neck. His face was still pale, but his eyes had begun to clear, sanity returning. Holmes snapped his fingers. Of course. The newspaper. I was so focused on deduction I forgot the one piece that could drive a man to suicide. The reason lies in that paper. With excitement barely restrained in his voice, he snatched up the copy of the Evening Standard the manager had been reading, and quickly scanned the front page. Yes, the Evening Standard. And here the headline. Crime in the Financial District, Murder at Mawson and Williams. Astronomical theft attempt ends in failure. Watson read it aloud. The article was placed prominently on the front page, marking it immediately as one of the most serious incidents in London today. I unfolded the paper and began to read. This afternoon, in the heart of the old city, a daring attempt at grand larceny took place. One man is dead, and the suspect has been apprehended, bringing the incident to a halt. Mawson and Williams, a respected securities firm, recently became custodian of bonds exceeding £1 million in value. The transfer was made on behalf of another firm in financial distress, prompting Mawson's to install a modern vault and assign armed guards to maintain constant watch. However, last week a man by the name of Hall Pycroft was newly hired. He has now been identified as Beddington, a known forger and convicted thief. Having served a 5-year sentence and released, he gained entry to Mawson's under a false identity. Using his employee status, he clandestinely duplicated security keys and gained full knowledge of the vault's layout and access routes. At precisely 1:20 p.m. today, Inspector Turson of the Old City Police observed a man descending the front steps of Mawson and Williams carrying a travelling case. Knowing that all staff leave at noon on Saturdays, Turson found this suspicious and followed him. With the assistance of Officer Pollock, the suspect was promptly arrested. Inside the case were discovered American Railroad bonds, mining shares, and numerous securities exceeding £100,000 in value. A search of Mawson and Williams was immediately carried out. The body of the firm's security guard was found inside the main vault, his skull fatally crushed by a blow to the back of the head. Authorities state that if not for Inspector Turson's swift action, the crime and the murder would not have been uncovered until Monday morning. As I finished reading, a deep silence settled over the room. A silence heavy enough to press against the chest. Beddington pretended to leave work for the day, only to slip back into the building, murder the guard, and make an attempt on the vault before being apprehended. Authorities believe that his elder brother, who is said to have aided him in previous crimes, is still at large. The police have launched a full-scale effort to track down his whereabouts. Holmes folded the newspaper and spoke quietly. Then it seems we can spare the police some trouble. Watson, even a swindler like that man still retains a trace of human feeling, it appears. He may be a fraud and a murderer, Yes. But hearing that he has been captured, and that his brother attempted to hang himself out of despair, that cannot sit pleasantly in his mind. No matter. We shall simply do our part. Mr. Pycroft, we will remain here and keep watch over him. You must go to the police station at once and make the report. Holmes cast a final glance at the man huddled in the corner with a broken, wretched expression. And his tone softened not with pity, but with a wary understanding of human ruin. Holmes' deductions always reveal the deepest corners of the human heart. Sherlock Holmes Mystery Collection. The journey toward truth continues. A journey through books with story Narae. That's all for today's story. Join us again for the next adventure.